We're pleased now to welcome in Oscar-nominated director Joshua Oppenheimer, who's participating in AAA's Film Festival this year. Joshua, thanks for stopping by.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So tell us why you wanted to give attendees this year this opportunity to actually see your director's cut of your film and to show another one of your films that not many have gotten to see yet.
There's two films and they're companion pieces. There's The Act of Killing and then The Look of Silence. The Act of Killing focuses on the perpetrators and allows them to dramatize, if you like, in any form they wish, the stories, the fantasies, the narratives that they tell themselves so that they can live with what they've done, and impose their vision of what they've done on the whole society. And through that process we expose those stories as lies. And as one perpetrator comes to realize that all of the stories he's told himself about what he's done are lies, a personal lie collapses for him, and so a national lie, that the genocide was heroic, collapses for Indonesia. The second film, which I always knew I would also make, focuses on what does it do to ordinary human beings, particularly the survivors, to have to live for 50 years in fear and in silence. That's The Look of Silence.
Now, how did you go about selecting these topics for your films?
Well, I didn't really go looking for the topic. I first went to Indonesia in 2001 to help a community of plantation workers make a film themselves about their struggle to organize a union in the aftermath of a military dictatorship where unions had been illegal. And I very quickly found horrible conditions. The women workers were made to spray a weed killer with no protective clothing that was very highly toxic and destroying their livers and killing the women in their 40s. And they were afraid to do much about it because it turned out their parents and grandparents had been in a union in 1965, had been accused of being potential communist sympathizers simply for being in the union, and had been killed for it. And they were afraid this could happen to them again. So I realized what was killing my friends wasn't just poison, but also fear, present-day fear. And then after we made that film, they said, would you come back and let's make another film about why we are afraid, a film that would hopefully intervene in the mechanisms of fear. So not so much a film about something, but an intervention. And I said yes immediately because I'd been living with these people. They were close to me. And I returned in early 2003, and very quickly the army threatened the survivors not to participate in the film, at which point the survivors said, it seemed a huge injustice to me. The survivors said, don't quit, don't give up, try to film the perpetrators. I was afraid to do that at first, but when I did, I found that all of them were immediately boastful about the worst details of the killings, and I saw that here it was this enormous story about impunity. Not about what happened then, but about impunity today, such that the killers could boast while threatening the survivors into silence. I showed this early boastful footage of the perpetrators back to those survivors who wanted to see it, and all of them, and then the broader human rights community said, keep filming the perpetrators because you're onto something so important. Anyone who sees this will be forced to acknowledge something terribly wrong today. And that was how I came across this Indonesia and this story.
Seems like a perfect thread from what they're doing here with Anthropology. What do you hope that they'll take away from seeing these films this week?
You have to treat and assume that everybody you film is a human being like you. And if you're filming someone who's done something awful, you have to have the humility to say, well, if I grew up in that person's family, in that context, I might have done the same thing. I hope I wouldn't, but I might have. And if you do that, that idea is somehow predicated on the notion that we're all much more similar than we are different. I don't know if that's a challenging notion to anthropologists today, but it certainly was when I was sort of brushing against anthropology as a university student. As I say, I'm a filmmaker, not an anthropologist. I also think that the participatory methods that I deploy in both of these films, and particularly the fact that the filmmaking process is the motor for both films' narrative, I think that I'm standing on the shoulders of French anthropologist and filmmaker Jean Rouch, whose work really inspired me to use the documentary camera as a prism to make visible not everyday life, not to document everyday life, but to make visible how what appears to be factual reality is actually the product of multiple interlocking, mutually enforcing fantasies and stories.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to stop by. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.